This is the School Success Podcast, a podcast for school leaders to learn from other school leaders what's working and what's not, and to get inspiration and encouragement, as well as strategies to grow school enrollment, connect with families, retain teachers, recruit teachers, and everything in between. You guys are heroes, and I cannot thank you enough for pouring into this next generation that's coming behind us. My goal is you will take at least one thing away from every episode that you can take back to your school to make it better than it is right now. Please enjoy the School Success Podcast.
Time for school.
Joining me on the podcast today is Brian DeGanza, a principal of a charter school here in beautiful Florida. We dive into his school, what's working, what's not. I learn a ton from him, and I'm sure you will too, so stay tuned for the next episode of the School Success Podcast. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the School Success Podcast. I'm your host, Mitchell Slater. I'm joined by a new friend just about an hour north of where I'm at in beautiful Melbourne, Florida. They got the best zoo ever. If you guys are ever in the area, the Brevard Zoo, it's awesome. But I'm joined by Principal Brian DeGanza. He is the head leader, CEO, principal of Imagine Schools there in West Melbourne. And he has been there for, I think it's 9 years now, took the school from right over a little bit of 100 kids up to now, I think it's 700, which he can dive into that. So he's obviously doing something right. And I wanted to have him on the podcast to learn from him, see what they're doing there at the school. But I won't take any more of his thunder. I'll kind of pass it off to him. Brian, welcome to the podcast. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Mitchell. Thanks so much for having me. So I'm the principal at Imagine Schools of West Melbourne. Proud to say that this is my 9th year there with Imagine West Melbourne, and moved here from Colorado to work with the school. I'm really proud. I've got an amazing staff that has really worked hard, especially over these last couple of years, to provide our students and our community with best educational opportunities available to them, and to build not just a strong academic approach, but a community, something that's focused on building academic intelligence, developing character, and it's really exciting. We have serving about 550 kids, and then we have a private preschool and VPK program as well. So we go from age 3 all the way up to 6th grade.
Man, well, obviously you guys are doing something right, it sounds like. Is it ever a thought that you're like, hey, I want to add on to those and do additional grades? Is that something in the possible future for you guys?
For sure. We actually have been in talks with Brevard County Public Schools over the years, and our families are begging us to continue to expand forward. So looking at hopefully within the next 2 years to expand up to 7th grade and then to 8th grade as well. And we'll see what the future brings.
So I know you guys are a part of the kind of the family of Imagine Schools, which I know they span all the way across to California and have a whole bunch of locations in Florida. Are there other Imagine School locations that go all the way, like, are they K-12, or are they kind of hone in on the middle school area?
No, yeah, we do have we have some schools that go up through 12th grade as well. So that is always in the back of our mind. We have a beautiful campus in West Melbourne with about 10 acres of land behind our school. So the option to expand is there. Right now, my focus is ensuring that we have a solid base and foundation, and then we'll build slowly as much as our community wants us to, and what we can do responsibly for our students and for our family.
Well, I'm sure being here in obviously the South Florida area, we got beautiful weather here, so the kids can be outside. What kind of fun stuff do you guys get to do being at your Imagine School location? What are some fun activities?
Oh man, we believe in doing a lot of family engagement activities. So COVID has made it really difficult, and we're slowly getting back into the groove of things and having families back on campus. But during the school day, I'm proud that my kids have a plethora of activities during the school day for them. We have visual arts, we have music, physical education. Here in Florida, you get to eat outside most days of the week. So we have basketball courts and a field that our kiddos, and a volleyball court that our kids are able to utilize. On top of that, we also have a library with a librarian, and then we have our STEM program. Our STEM program is really unique. We've partnered with NASA and the Kennedy Space Center. We have 12 robots on campus, 2 3D printers. So starting in kindergarten, we start teaching our kids how to code. By the time they're in third grade, they're building and designing rockets that we're launching. When they're in the fifth and sixth grade, they're coding robots to do battle bots and to complete different missions. So we get to go outside a lot with the robots and with the rocketry lessons and teaching them, being here on the Space Coast, we have to tap into our culture and our community here and let our kids know what's going on.
That is awesome. And I always forget that. You guys are probably, is it 30 minutes from NASA and Cape Canaveral area?
Just south, yeah, about 45 minutes. It's amazing. We when we have launches, we'll bring our entire student population outside to be able to watch the launch. And we more recently did a full unit in STEM class on the Lucy mission, which is one of the big missions recently, and was able to partner with NASA and have some deeper conversations. And I'm talking about how it's really shaped our community and built Brevard County.
Wow. I didn't even think about that. I know that SpaceX has been sending up like crazy amount of rockets, and here in Port St. Lucie where I'm at, there was that one from a couple months ago that it was at night, 9 o'clock, but it made like, everybody I think will remember, it parted like the sky. It looked like you could see the sun coming through. That one was incredible. And I'm sure like when that happened, I was telling my wife, I was like, I'm sure there are so many calls to the police department right now being like, it's true, there are aliens, there's a UFO coming in. It was incredible.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
So with you guys being a charter school, I'm curious, do you have sports teams and compete with the local schools? And if you were to add additional grades, would that mean you'd obviously, eventually maybe add a football team, which that would be high school, but kind of how does it work when you guys are competing in sports?
Yeah. So we do a lot of intramural athletics right now. So it's mostly on site, but historically we have put together a couple different teams that would compete against other charter schools and some of the Christian schools that are a little bit smaller. And we would travel around Brevard County playing against those teams. So we do offer athletic opportunities for our kids. We've got quite a few teachers that were ex-athletes and participated in different sports. And that's what I try to tap into is I want my staff to provide things that they're passionate about, something that they grew up with, something that really made them and cultivated the person that they are, and to be able to share that knowledge and that passion with the kids is what we really try to tap into. So our activities vary year by year, really dependent upon what my families want, what my teachers are excited about, and we try to mesh the two. But we've had cheerleading teams, we've had football teams, flag football for elementary school, basketball, volleyball, track and field. We're actually getting ready to start Girls on the Run, which is a great program that we sponsor that is starting up next month, where we'll start getting them prepping for a 5K. And it's pretty exciting, but we get different activities all the time.
And so I know I told you briefly before we started recording how I did a lot of my growing up in Alaska and was a part of a charter school. One of the cool things, at least there, which this will lead into a question here in a second, is, enrolled through a charter school, was homeschool charter school, which is obviously big up there in Alaska. But I was able to, there's no homeschool football teams up there. So I enrolled into homeschooling and then was able to play for a public school football team my whole career, which I did that all through high school. Is that something you see happening with Imagine Schools too? Do kids go to your school, but then get some type of exemption or something to go play for a sports team in another public school nearby?
Yeah, so I don't see it a whole lot at an elementary school level, but working with, like I said, Imagine Schools, we're a nationwide organization, nearly 50 schools across the U.S. So a lot of my colleagues have middle school and high school level students, and a lot of them will. There's state of Florida, every state has different regulations and requirements, but the state of Florida does allow for a charter school student to participate with their home school if they want to get into athletics or any other extracurricular activity per se. So that does give the flexibility for a family to choose to go to an academic program, a school during the day that they believe in, but then also have the opportunities to participate in sports.
And I'll put you on the spot for one question I just thought of. I was like, I'd love to hear this, because every school has some type of fundraiser typically that they do. Maybe it's every year they have this one and it's really successful. They try and sell whatever it is. For you guys, do you do any fundraisers throughout the year? And if you do, what is the one that's like it works the best, brings in the most funds for whatever thing you're trying to raise money for? Because I know there's people out there that's a struggle for schools, as they get annoyed with them. There's too many of them. Parents are burned out, but I feel like there's got to be some schools out there that have some winners that those who are listening be like, oh my gosh, I've never thought about doing that before.
Oh man, that's it's something that for my students and my family population I serve, we don't do any large scale school wide fundraisers. Our biggest school wide fundraiser per se that we do, we actually do Jeans Days. We're a uniform school, so I mean we require all of our students to wear uniforms every single day. So having a jeans day or a themed dress day for our family, for all of our students, typically we build those in right around the holidays. We attempt to do a lot of community outreach, supporting our families that may be struggling, especially this past couple years. It's been really difficult. So we'll do those jeans days or the free dress days to try to bring in some additional funds to be able to support some families that just need a little extra help. So that's probably the biggest money maker per se that we get in. But right now, over the last few years, we've been really leaning on Donors Choose. We have a really supportive community here in Brevard County. My teachers, we've probably in the last year and a half have brought in almost probably $80,000 to $90,000 worth of donations just through Donors Choose. Now that's really specific. That's for different curriculum, different resources. There are items that go right back into the hands of our kids. So it's really meaningful, really purposeful, and our community gets to choose what they believe in and what they really want to
Love
support.
that. And I know one of the things I've been asking those that have been on the podcast, kind of like same basic amount of questions. So the next one, kind of going into what I've asked others, is if I'm sure as a school there's still some challenges, and you've been there long enough. I'm sure you've overcome many of them. But what are some of those? If you were to put it, doesn't have to be three, it could be one, it could be two. But if you were to put it into three things you guys as a school are just big challenges you guys are kind of facing right now, and how you're maneuvering around those, what would you say those three are?
It's a great question. I think the right now, obviously, elephant in the room, most difficult component that we're fighting through is just getting through the pandemic. We want to be a support for our community. We know we need our kids need to be in school. They need to be in school for their education, for their mental health, for their ability to socialize, and just to be well-rounded human beings for the future. But they also need to be in school so our community can continue. It was really challenging when my teachers are bending over backwards trying to do virtual learning 2 years ago when this initially rolled out, but our parents being required to stay home to help them really made things difficult within our community. So we want our kids in school, and working through the pandemic with having a lot of students that are missing time, teachers having to miss time, it takes a lot of flexibility, and it's a different approach now than it was even 2-3 years ago into ensuring that every child is getting what they need academically. We have a lot of pull-out small groups that are occurring not just 2 to 3 times a week, but have to happen daily now to ensure that the kids that were gone yesterday are being caught up to speed and that we're not lagging for the entire year. So that's definitely been a challenge, is overcoming some of the obstacles with COVID and ensuring that I'm creating an atmosphere where my students can always be kept safe, my staff can always be kept safe, and then on top of that, being able to educate them to their fullest. And it's definitely been challenging, but I'm blessed to have an amazing staff that is some of the most passionate and loving people that I've ever had an opportunity to work with, and they truly pour their hearts and souls into every single day and trying to make the most for every single child. So it's made things much more reasonable than I would have ever anticipated because my staff they care so much. They're willing to put in that extra time, that extra effort. So that's definitely helped. As I continue to grow, having increased enrollment every single year under my tenure, the finding quality candidates is definitely a struggle. Hoping that we're building future leaders every day and developing kiddos that are ready to help our community. It takes, like I said, really passionate, educated individuals, and right now we're seeing that candidate pool decrease every single year here in the state of Florida. And that is one thing that I would love to be a part of finding a solution to that. I think that there are some things that we can do as a community, as a state, that could really help build that candidate pool. But right now we're seeing it depleted every year. And with the current state of education, the current climate that they're having to work in, it is definitely challenging to increase that pool. There's a lot of questions around education here in the state of Florida and how it's going to progress over the next few years. So I'm hoping we can get some things moving in the right direction to start getting a better pool of candidates coming up from the college ranks. So those are two of the major aspects that I know that I face here on my campus. I know that a lot of my colleagues statewide are facing.
If you were to put, I know this, I don't know if there's even an answer we can put on it, but if, the people I've talked to with the podcasts across the country already, it's some of the same things coming up, of course, COVID and, teacher retention and recruitment. If you were to kind of pinpoint, if we were to kind of brainstorm some of them, where do you think that is rooted in? Is it, man, they don't feel like they're not getting paid enough. They're not feeling fulfilled in their job. They're not being treated right by the upper leadership at a school. Where do you think from your eye, because again, I know everybody probably have a different idea across the country, but where do you kind of see the issues lying and what can the county, state, country do to maybe correct it? If you could put a name on it.
It's a great question. I think it's multifaceted. I really do believe it's multifaceted. There are components within education right now where we're constantly seeing increasing accountability. We're seeing every single year there's new measures that are put in place. We're seeing a lot of legislation going on across the United States right now regarding expectations for teachers. I mean, in the last 2 weeks, I've heard 4 different states, I believe that it's up to now, discussing the idea of requiring teachers to submit all of their lesson plans prior to the school year even beginning for parents to review, give feedback on, and basically have their children accept or decline that lesson. I feel like with the accountability measures and some of the legislators that are involved with making these decisions are not educated on what it takes to be an educator. And in those scenarios, we're seeing situations where teachers are feeling disrespected. They're not getting the level of respect that they're putting forth so much effort and they're pouring their blood, sweat, and tears into this career every single day. So we're seeing an increase in accountability. We're seeing an increase in expectations. The cost of living is increasing, but one thing that's been staying pretty steady is teacher salary. We're not paying them, in my opinion, as a school leader, what they deserve. I feel like we do need to do something to make pay equitable for educators in the United States. It's not just the state of Florida. Our governor has made some moves to try to increase it, and it's taking baby steps every year, but overall, the level of respect and in the profession, if we can imagine educators being held in the same light as our doctors and our lawyers, if the profession itself held that much tout, I feel like that candidate pool would be increasing to where we would have the best and the brightest in that field. But right now, one day we're heading into COVID and teachers are honored and are held up and appreciated so much, and then a year later we're into COVID and that climate changes very drastically and very quick for some of our schools. And again, I feel blessed because I talk to colleagues that are dealing with so much across the United States. My parents and my families are very passionate and dedicated and support my staff. So I don't have to see some of those struggles that a lot of my colleagues are dealing with, not on a daily basis like they are. But Brevard County is a special little place, so we have some pretty passionate and educated parents that are always willing to step in, support. But I think nationwide, that's a struggle that we're seeing.
Man, anybody who's listening, I know mainly it's the school leaders that are tuning in, but I hope you guys are getting recognition from these parents that are entrusting their kids to you. I know the school my son goes to, one of the things they had, I thought was a really good idea, because I asked one of the leaders, I was like, hey, do you like coffee? And she's like, oh yeah, we like coffee. And I said, what kind of coffee you like? I was trying to get an idea because I wanted to bring the teachers coffee. She goes, well, we actually have a form on our website for those parents that go in there, and it's a Google form that they ask all the teachers to fill out before the year. And it says, what's your favorite candy? What's your favorite movie? What's your favorite whatever? And they filled out this whole form. So I went on there and I found his teachers. And one like Dunkin', one like Starbucks, one like, all these different ones. And so 2 times already I've gone by and I bought his teachers coffees. When I drop them off, I hand off all these coffees, and you can see it in their face. Like they're like, wow, like, thank you. Not to say that they don't get thanked by other parents, but just a small thing of a $3 coffee, $5 coffee, I know can go a long way. So I'm hoping that people are doing that to their teachers. I'm super thankful for them pouring into my child and giving of themselves to them all day long, which is exhausting just to even think about. So I'm thankful for them, and I hope more people are thankful as well.
No, I think that's incredible. I mean, and it's those little things. My teachers, it makes their day when they get even just a short little handwritten note, a quick little email. The teachers, they don't, the Starbucks gift card, right? It's not about the gift card itself, but it's the going out of your way to show that appreciation, because they really do. They're pouring their life and into education. And what a lot of us don't understand. My teachers, for example, they are in the building by 7:30 a.m. They don't leave until about 4:30, but their job is not done. That's the time they're with kids. That's the time that they're teaching. The preparation beyond that is additional hours every week. The grading and communicating with parents is hours beyond that every day of the week. So there's some amazing people. For sure.
When I lived in Alaska, I worked as a youth pastor at a church. So I've always been typically in some type of ministry because I just love kids. And one of the coolest things, and I feel like teachers got to have the same feeling. Like you're pouring into these kids, you're building this relationship with them. And they're like, do they really appreciate me? Like, do they really know all the things I'm doing? And so I had the same thoughts as a youth pastor. It's like, these kids are crazy sometimes. They're all over the place. And then now it's years later where I get that Facebook message, that text or whatever. And they said, Pastor Mitchell, man, I just want to say thank you so much. You put up with me when I was difficult. And I've gotten like a handful of those. And man, they just like, they mean so much. Like all those years later, they remember. And so I think one of the best pieces of advice, and I know this applies to teaching as well, is I asked one of my friends, I was like, I feel like I'm not making a difference. Like I feel like these kids aren't learning like what I'm teaching them in these youth lessons. And he's like, well, do they know that you love them? I was like, oh yeah, they know I love you. And he goes, you're doing awesome then, because at the end of the day, they're probably not going to remember that random thing you said, but they're going to remember years later how you made them feel and that you loved them, you appreciated them, you were thankful for them. And I see that same thing with teachers. Obviously teachers are, they have to help teach and, bring kids to learn the curriculum. But I know that years later, speaking of myself, the people in my life, I look back at coaches, and obviously my mom was my teacher being a homeschooler or whatever, but the people in my life that really meant a lot to me, inspired me in the way they treated me. I remember that. I don't really remember that specific lesson that my mom taught me, but I remember how much, of course, my mom loved me and all that. So I'm sure teachers are, I'm assuming, in the same boat. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, though.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, before becoming a school leader, I was a teacher as well. And I worked in some schools that, were inner city and some major U.S. cities that you got to see that gratification was right away. You're teaching a new concept, that light clicks and everything's working. You see kids grow tremendously in a matter of weeks. That acknowledgement of your hard work is there. But then I worked in some suburbs where you just didn't see it all the time. These kids were doing really well, and they were, you just didn't see the growth. And as an educator, you question yourself, am I making an impact on these kids' lives? As educators, I've yet to find an educator that has joined the profession for a reason other than wanting to make the world a better place, wanting to help the future generations and to make an impact with kids. So for us, that's what we're always looking at is to find that growth. Am I making a difference? And I remember being out in Colorado and having my 6th grade kiddos and just wondering that, like you said, I knew my kids knew I cared about them. I'd go to their games after schools and on the weekends and was a part of their lives and their families in some cases. But I always questioned myself, am I making a big enough impact? And it wasn't until a couple of years ago when I was principal down here in Florida that I was getting calls all of a sudden. And it was February, and it was March, and I'm talking to these kids that are just randomly have found me, and I'm getting letters in the mail that of them inviting me out to their graduation for high school. And I thought that was pretty amazing. And it's one of those things that it's like as an educator, you're impacting their lives, and you can make that decision to be someone that they think about throughout the rest of their life and their careers and every decision they make, and looking back at the role models that they've had. But it starts with that love. And I really like that you said that, because they need to know that you're there for them. You know, as educators, we're kind of like the parents away from home. And that's something I take to heart. And I tell my parents, you drop your child off at school, I'm going to treat them as if they're my own. I'm going to love them. I'm going to protect them. I'm going to care for them. And when I need to, I'm going to kick them in the butt. Right? I want them reaching their full potential. I want them to be the best person that they can be. But when I discipline a child and I have to go through, hey, you made a mistake, we're going to learn from this, we're going to grow from this, we're all said and done, I still love you. You're a great kid. We're going to learn from this and we're going to move on. And they need to know that you care about them.
Man, 100%. And you've been in education now for a while. I'm curious, and maybe this is something that'll probably come out maybe even more years in the future. Do you have any kids that have reached out to you that are in like a crazy awesome field? Like you taught them and they're like at NASA, they're at Tesla, is there anything like crazy that have you had a kid that reached out to you? You're like, I taught that kid, you know?
So right now, the kids that I've taught, I started off as a kindergarten teacher. And then moved in pre-kindergarten, kindergarten. I taught students with autism. My background is in special education. So teaching younger kids initially, and then moved out to Colorado before I became principal here and taught some sixth graders. Those kiddos are now very young professionals. So no one, I've got a couple students who have moved on to be pilots, which is pretty exciting. I've got some students that are in engineering and working towards hopefully becoming astronauts or NASA scientists and working in that realm. So got some students that definitely a lot of students I'm really proud of, but none that have been in the industry to that level yet to reach their full potential. I would say all my students are still striving to reach their full potential.
It's coming. So, all right, we spent an awesome amount of time on that one. So now we get to the fun one. So what is Imagine Schools, your specific school? What are you guys just kind of doing awesome at? You're kicking butt at, and you're just really proud of what you're to do. If you could put it into three, I'm sure that you could probably make a laundry list of ones, but if you could put it into three, what would you say?
Definitely start off with our enrollment. I talked about that a little bit before. Coming into Brevard County here, we had a K through 6 school that had about 170 students. And now that was in 2013. Fast forward to 2022, and we're, like I said, if I were to add our VPK preschool, we're getting really close to 600 students now. And that's going through the pandemic, seeing increased enrollment. And that really has to do with my parents and my families. They're seeing the education that we're providing. They see the amazing teachers that I have, how dedicated my staff, my front office staff, my custodial staff, my cafeteria staff, my bus drivers. Everyone shares that passion for our kids, and they're telling their neighbors. And we continuously enroll year round. And it's that word of mouth that's really getting families to be aware of what we're providing here. We're nestled into a beautiful little community in West Melbourne, so as the word continues to spread, we're continuing to enroll. So that's something I'm really proud of, is that even through the challenges, we're continuing to build our base and to provide more people within our community what we believe in. Two main reasons why we've gotten there. One reason is our emphasis on character education. We believe in the whole child. It's not just academics. It's not just making kids as intelligent as we can. It's also about building character. I want my kids not to only be academically intelligent, but be able to know how to use that intelligence to help their community, how to make our world a better place. And that's something we focus on. A couple years ago, we were named a National School of Character. We were one of 6 schools in the state of Florida to win that distinction. So we were really proud of going through that process with character.org and acknowledging everything that we're doing on our campus to build sound culture and sound, not just academics, but having the moral and ethical values within. And that's not just a school. That's the partnership with parents. That's parents understanding how important it is and wanting to develop their child and partnering with the school to get the most out of their education, and which ties into culture. And culture is the critical building block, in my opinion, of everything. And when I first came in 2013, that was my focus. We had a really small staff, and it was about building a trusting culture where we all had a common vision. We all knew where we wanted to go, and we built that together, and understanding that we're going to have each other's back. We're going to support one another. We're in it together. I don't run, it's not a dictatorship. It's not a top-down approach. The way I run my school is very much bottom-up. If we have a problem, I want to go to the problem. I want to go to the source. I want to build solutions off the people that are facing the problems, the people that are closest to the problem. So we build a culture of ownership, of empowerment, and of working together to provide every child with what they need to be successful in life. And then that branches out to providing every parent what they need to help their child be successful in life. And then it branches out to every staff member getting what they need to be the best educator they can be. And ensuring that every person we call justice, is giving every person what they need to be successful. And then integrity is understanding that we're in it together. It's all about wholeness, and that each of us plays a vital role. And without one piece, that puzzle is not going to be complete. So we need to work together to provide that for everyone.
I totally agree with those.
So those are some of the things that I absolutely love about being an Imagine employee, and being able to grow with Imagine, and to be a building block in the community of West Elkhorn.
I love it. And I totally agree about the school culture, and I can see that from what you've done. As soon as you got there, it's been put in place. The school's grown. Obviously, the culture must be good. I'm sure teachers are loving being there. So if you were to, another random one I thought of with that. So you obviously are focusing on school culture. You guys are doing a good job of that. Obviously, people love working there. If you were to put just kind of like, what's one piece of that you're like, man, this is a really big piece for school culture, or to help keep teachers there and keep them happy? Like, I don't know if you were put maybe just one thing on that people could take back to their schools.
So if you're a new principal entering in with a brand new campus, is take it slow. Take your time, get to know your staff. Let your staff know that you care about them, that you want to get to know them as a human and as an educator. Building that relationship with each of them individually goes a long way. Jumping in and trying to right the ship in 30 days is a recipe for disaster. You have to develop a strong sense of community, of understanding, of humility, of that you yourself as the school leader, there's no job beneath you. You are going to be on the front line with them. You're going to be the one that's sweeping floors and wiping down tables and cleaning whiteboards side by side with your staff. And I think once your staff knows that you're going to be willing to be in the trenches with them, that you want to know them, and that you want to be a part of their success as well, that it starts jiving. You start working well together, and you can build a strong base, build an army ready to fight for the community.
Love it. Well, I might took maybe some thunder away from you for your final point if it was going to be about school culture. But if you were to leave everybody with just one thing, like inspiration, encouragement, something that you were like, school leaders are listening in, and you wanted to leave them with one thing, what would you say that one thing is?
This day and age, one of my major points, and I think this works really well for education and for our community as well, is I've been telling a lot of my teachers right now, it is what it is. And that doesn't mean that we approach things with less urgency or less importance, but it's just taking the time to truly reflect on what you have control over and what you do not have control over. Control what you can control. Make what you can control the absolute best that it can be. But don't let the items that you have no control over break you down. Staying strong, and that's one of the things that we go through. Yes, it's extremely difficult to educate during the pandemic, but you know what? It's extremely difficult to be a parent during the pandemic. It's extremely difficult to do a lot of things. So right now, when we're faced with a challenge that we have no control over, it is what it is. What can we control and what can we make better?
Love it. Well, everyone, Brian DeGanza for you there, an awesome principal up in Melbourne. And Brian, thank you so much for taking time to be on the podcast. This one was one of my favorites so far. We talked even longer than I said it was probably going to be because we just kept on coming up with new things to talk about. So thank you personally from myself to you for educating and pouring into the next generation, as well as those teachers that are working hard to help those kiddos. I appreciate it tremendously. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing awesome.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
I absolutely love talking to people like Brian, those who are passionate about kids, passionate about education, and just pouring into that next generation so that they're better than they are right now. Brian is doing such an amazing job, and I just want to encourage him and all of you listening to keep doing what you're doing because it is making a difference. I hope you're able to take at least one thing from the episode today, take it back to your school to make it better than it is right now. And if you're looking for some help, maybe you're looking to up your game, grow enrollment, connect better with families, redo that website that's been sitting there for maybe 5 or 10 years, I encourage you to reach out to my team and I. We would love to help you. We specifically love helping charter and private schools grow enrollment and connect better with their families. You can visit our website, ourschoolsuccess.com. That's ourschoolsuccess.com. We would love to help you. We'll be here next time with another awesome guest on the School Success Podcast. We'll see you then.